Hey, this is Max. Welcome back to another CSR2 video. I'm here with Mustang Cobra Jet, which is currently the fastest showdown car for the Chicago Showdown, and it is as well one of the lockable cars for the purpose of the Detroit America Road Trip event. So, by viewer request, I was asked to make a Stage 6 effects video on this with the help of the mysterious stranger. I'm going to do exactly that for you in this video, which is to explain the various effects of the Stage 6s for this car and how it may impact your ability to get through both Showdown and also the event. Alright, starting off, we're going to look at the Stage 5 only, which will give us a baseline to work off of as far as this car is concerned. At Stage 5 only, the car is not the slowest, but certainly not the quickest either. One thing about this car is that it likes the short, powerful nitrous duration, and at least when you start off at Stage 5, you're going to have a relatively aggressive final drive, giving you a decent time of about 9.825. Now, grip is 0 to 100. It seems to like high grip, and it's a bit of it's only 3 gears, so it's a bit of launching perfectly would make a big difference in how this car operates. It's a little finicky when it comes to launching, and if you launch it off of perfect, either late or early, it could hurt you. Now, as the car gets more upgraded, some of this will change a little bit, but generally speaking, it's a pretty straightforward car to drive. You would launch it perfectly and then go from there. So let's go ahead and take a run in it, get a feel for it, and see how things play out with this car, at least at Stage 5 only. Now, this car is not, again, it's a little finicky when it comes to the launch point, and it's not really a natural dyno buster, but it should be able to beat dyno a little bit. So as long as you get it on the perfect and get out of first within a reasonable amount, usually around 40 miles per hour is good, you should be able to get a decent run. Now, that one I launched late, which hurts me a little bit, but overall you'll see that it still runs right around dyno, and in fact slightly under with that setup, as long as you launch it basically perfectly. Now, if I got it even better, I could probably beat dyno by more, but that's your driving technique. We'll talk about it more when we get to a fully maxed car, because at that point, whether you can get a 6.9 run or not really comes into play. Okay, now that we've talked about Stage 5 only, let's go ahead and start looking at the Stage 6s, starting off as always with engine and going right. What we're going to do is, I'm just going to dyno these for you for now and kind of give you the dyno differences, and then we'll talk about, understand that it's always going to run a little faster than dyno, and therefore it could outperform the numbers that you see here by a bit. But we're not going to really look at that until we go into the Stage 6 combinations point. So again, every one of these you can always tweak a little bit to try to get the maximum evo out of it. And once you hit the highest evo point, that's where you're going to do another dyno and get your time. So engine's a pretty strong Stage 6, dropping the time from 9.7 runtime or 9.8 dyno down to a 9.417. So engine is definitely one of the stronger Stage 6s. Remember, the car starts at 9.8. It's going to end up at 6.9 with a 7.1 dyno. So you have quite a bit of difference in time to make up with these Stage 6s. So unlike some cars like the McLaren F1, each individual Stage 6 should have a decent amount of impact, even if it's a weaker one. Meaning none of them should just be like a few hundreds. It's going to be at least a tenth or two just to make sure that it makes up for the difference. But as always, one could be really strong and 3 or 4 could be really weak. That's common with all cars in this game. So now looking at the numbers, this is not going to be as good. 9.663 without fine tuning. Tweaking it a little bit. Looks like numbers are still going up, so we're going to push it. And now it doesn't look like it's doing much. So let's take a look. 9.656 for the turbo which is still a drop from the base tier stage 5 only, but again, it's not as dramatic as engine was. And that is not uncommon, again, with turbo intake. They tend to be weaker stage 6s. So let's see if intake will outperform turbo. Looks like they're going to be close, and it really comes down to this. Based on that, engine may or may not make it. Not engine, but intake may or may not actually beat turbo, unless the numbers here, based on the additional PP point, we can get it a little bit faster. Right, so Evo looks a little lower. The numbers, it actually beats it by a little bit. So I'll have to look at the turbo numbers again to make sure which one actually came out ahead, but they're very, very close. All right. So that was definitely two of the weaker ones. As you can see, the two both dropped to about 9.6, and engine dropped to 9.4. So engine's definitely stronger. Looking at nitrous. Now, nitrous, depending on the car, could be hit or miss. For some cars, nitrous really pushes it a lot, and for other cars, it does much less. Now, we do see a jump here, but that ended up lower than both turbo and engine. Turbo, I keep saying engine. Turbo and intake, but nitrous should have some effect. It is a little bit better right now, and we can still tune final drive to try to push that more. But again, it's not a huge jump. So nitrous will get you into the low 9.6, but it's unlikely to get you under 9.6. Mind you, that doesn't mean it can't run under 9.6. This will probably run 9.5 something, but dyno-wise, we're looking at 9.6 still. So it is the best out of the three between turbo intake and nitrous, but it's still quite a bit behind engine at this point. So nitrous is ultimately not that strong a stage 6 here. Okay, moving to body. Now body, traditionally, for a lot of tier 5 cars, is a big stage 6, and it's obviously also here with that huge Evo jump. Let's see how big a jump it is in performance, because when you see a big Evo jump, you know there is quite a bit of performance change, and it's still going up. So I'm able to squeeze more out of it very quickly. Notice I'm not really touching nitrous or tire, because quite frankly, you don't really need to for getting the highest Evo points. Let me see. I thought I saw 1870 earlier. There it is. Can we get 1871? No. All right. So let's stick with 1870 Evo. Wow, look at that. 8.9. That is almost a full second drop. 0.9 second drop just for body. This means for you, for showdown, and for the event possibly, missing body could make or break your runs. For the 1200 trophy event, the first day, other than a maxed Cobra Jet, you really can't get anywhere. But as the event goes into the last days, certainly you can get just as far, probably with other cars with not maxed Cobra Jet. But if you have body, it helps you a lot. I mean, you're dropping almost a full second, and when you run, it will be a full second basically from the stage 5 only dyno, and that means it's a huge stage 6 and very important to have. So body definitely on the top. I doubt anything here is going to outperform it. Let's take a look at tire. Now that's not bad dyno wise, number wise, but from just the change. But again, it beats nitrous, but it doesn't beat engine right now. So while it's not a bad stage 6, and we can tune it out for some more performance there to maybe get it into the 9.4s. I'm not positive here. I'm going to try. Looks like 76 might be the highest number there. 9.5018. So it does not quite get into the 9.4s on the dyno, but it does put it right behind engine at this point. So body, engine, tire right now coming in pretty far on the top. Let's see our final stage 6 transmission and whether this is a good one or a weak one. Again, watching the numbers, that didn't change much. The real numbers here. You go, oh, that looks pretty good. That's definitely going to be better than tire. Question is whether it's going to also be better than engine. Let's take a look at the dyno. Yeah, no. It ekes out tire, but it's not in the 9.4 range. Therefore, it does not beat engine, but it does beat tire by a hair, right? About a hundredth or so better than tire, and I'm trying to get a little more out of it. But 498, it did make it into 9.4s. So, all right. So it looks like at this point we can have a tentative list. I'm going to confirm this in the video itself. So what I'm giving you verbally may not actually match what I'm going to show here as the list. But off the top of my head, memory-wise, right now the order here would be body, engine, trans, and then tire, nitrous, and I think intake, turbo, or turbo intake. That's the two I can't quite remember for sure. I think turbo might have been better than intake by a hair, though. So that's kind of your order here. And that means from stage 6 combination effects standpoint, if you don't have a fully maxed car, your big stage 6s will make a huge difference in the performance of the car versus not having body and trans, right? So let's do body and trans here. Body and trans are big ones. Actually, body, engine, and trans. Let's do the top 3. And let's compare it to the bottom 4, as we tend to do in these comparisons with a stage 6 combinations. With just these 3, you're changing the car from a 9.8 car to over 2,000 Evo here. Okay, well over 2,000 Evo. And that's a beautiful thing, because the higher the Evo, the better the car, and the faster it's going to run. 8.0. Now, that is still a full second off from what it can run fully maxed, or at least almost 0.9 off from what the dyno will be fully maxed. So, mind you that 3 top stage 6 will drop you from 9.8 to 8.0, running probably 7.9, 7.8s if you run it, but it's not going to ultimately get you into the 7s by much, if anything. So that other 5 stage 6s, or other 4, I'm sorry, is still very important if you're ultimately trying to get down to where you're going to be highly competitive against, for example, a Copo Camaro. All right, now let me try to get this on. Whoops, now I'm early. Last time I was late. This time I'm early. So this is not optimal run, but at least we can get a feel for where it is. Now that looks like an 8.0 run, probably 8.1, given that I kind of screwed up the launch. So almost dyno, but it really should be able to beat that. Again, I didn't launch it perfectly. Let go just a little too early. Talking about that, let's go now and go ahead and max the car out. I'm not going to run the other 5 stage 6s, but I can tell you that it's probably not going to come as close to 8.0. Other 4, I keep saying 5. The other 4 stage 6s isn't likely to come close to 8.0. If anything, based on their individual stuff, 2/10, 2/10, 2/10, and then this one's a decent amount, about 5/10 or 4/10. So it'll drop at least a second plus. So you're probably going to be in the 8.5, 8.4 range with the other stage 6s. But let's go ahead and talk about this car maxed out real quick and discuss a little bit about launching it for the actual showdown, because that seems to be one of the biggest struggles for a lot of guys. Even though they maxed the car, they're struggling in showdown because they're not getting the launch down just right, because it requires you to use the manual launch. Showdown is just like live racing. You're using manual launch. Therefore, even if you know the, quote, shift pattern, even if you know you're supposed to launch, quote, a specific way, getting it is a lot harder than it may sound. How you can practice, and this is all I'm telling you, I'm not perfect at this by any means, but how you can get it about right is based on the release technique for me. What I do is I basically time the release and hit the launch button when I would normally release the needle. So in this case, it'll be right at the beginning of 1, like that. Now, if you notice, that was a 7,000 RPM launch. That means this particular emulator device timing is different than the one I'm used to. So now I have to adjust my launch pattern, meaning I have to hit my buttons earlier. Now notice a late launch will kill your run, 7.2. It's supposed to run 6.9. I went on 1, but I waited until there was a little flash of red on the edge, which is generally how I time these things. I look at where in the number, as it counts down, I should hit the button. So this time I'm going to do slightly early. So I need to adjust from here, 7,000, to there, which is about 6,000. And what you really ultimately want is the right here on this a little hair towards 5,900. But look, at this point, if I can get it on 6,000, I'll be happy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch a little hair earlier, and that one gave me 57, 5,800. It's still not going to be as good as a run as if I got it dead on perfect. Once again, you'll look at the time, you'll notice that it fails yet again to hit a good time, although my shifting wasn't that great either. But so that's literally the window you're working with for Showdown. You cannot launch it off either on the late or early side and expect to beat the guys that have this down pat. And those are the guys that are running dead on, which is meaning their needle is going to land right there one way or the other. Either they're doing it like this, which is a possibility, okay, or they're doing it the drop way that I'm doing. Now, I kind of screwed that up again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do one more run and try to get it just right. And I just want to show you that the 6.9 is possible through timing. The launch, again, I never use that tap, tap, tap method. If anything, that screws me up. So if that's the method you use, of course, you have to figure out on the dyno your own way to get the consistency down. But for me, it comes back to watching that. And eventually, the timing will be correct, and you will get a 6.9 run. And all it is at that point is basically let the car run through. The better drivers will get closer to the 6.94s. I did a 6.986, so that wasn't optimal. But if you can consistently at least do 6.9xx, you will still get much further in Showdown. Again, timing for me on that one was a negative 0.317 launch point. So again, I see guys that are getting good times that have 0.015. To me, what that tells me is that they're using the tap, tap, tap method. They're keeping the needle right on the green, waiting until the absolute last moment, and then hitting launch to get the car to launch. In my technique, you're basically hitting the launch button whenever you would normally just release the needle. You're not actually releasing anything. You're holding the gas down, just hitting launch. If you can get the timing down, this method is actually easier, in my opinion, than trying to manage multiple things at the same time, including tapping the button, watching the needle, and then trying to do the countdown, and then hitting the launch button all consistently. So it's really a technique that requires people to practice to get the hang of. Once you get it down, understand that my timing because of my device and your timing because of your device will be different. Every device has its own slight bit of lag, and when it comes down to tapping a launch button, even a few hundredths of a second delay in your device will make a difference in the grand scheme of things for you as to when you time your launch. But again, fully max car, in order to get that 6.9 consistently, absolutely must get that launch down. Once you get the launch down, there's really not a whole lot of mistakes you can make. You want to get out of first around 36 mile per hour, hit nitrous at the same time, get the car, and then run it either late good or late deep good or early perfect or whatever it is at that point. Just don't redline it and let it bounce, and you should still run a decent run. I get a lot of my tune and techniques off of Zukar, so I want to give a shout out to him and his channel, because obviously I didn't come up with this, he did. I'm just using his technique, but the launching I use whatever way is best for me. Most of his videos do not show a launch button. It's done off of the needle drop. All you have to do to translate his technique to your own with the launch button is to watch the timing. and then adapt the timing to your own way, and you should be fine. Again, the Cobra Jet is not a bad car. It beats dyno slightly on its own. However, it is a high performance point car no matter what, even from stage 5 only. Therefore, it's not going to have lobby advantage in live. And generally speaking, you will find that whatever upgrades you did, you run into live, you'll find cars that are somehow running faster than you. That's because they may have a lower performance point setup with higher Evo when they beat dyno just like you, so therefore it's tougher to win with this car. It's otherwise not a bad car. Now, for the actual event, the American event, I don't think you really need anything like a Max Cobra Jet. But of course, having body stage 6 could make your life so much easier than not having it. Alright, so that is my review of the Mustang Cobra Jet Stage 6 effects, with a little bit of discussion about how the launch affects your ability to get through and be successful at the showdown. Any questions about this car, feel free to ask me in the comments. If you like the video, please leave a like so I know that the video is done correctly. If you have suggestions, I'm always open to them. I am never against hearing from my viewers or not taking their suggestions when I feel their suggestions helpful to other viewers. If you like my channel and would like to get notifications when I put up new videos, please subscribe so you can get those notifications. And as always, thank you for watching my videos. I'll catch you next time.